The 9/11 Commission left World Trade Center 7's collapse out of its report. FEMA's 2002 inquiry blamed World Trade Center 7's collapse on fires, though it admits that its best hypothesis has only a low probability of occurrence. Rice notes that the media have basically kept the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 hidden from public view. The Phantom Pile Driver. 2 days after 9/11, Dr. Denik Bazant offered a rationale for the most catastrophic structural failure in history. 7 years later, his thesis still underlies official claims that total collapses were inevitable. Bazant's mathematical model of the upper floor's transformation into a pile driver block free-falling one-story to hammer the entire tower into scrap metal and powder involves very misty allegations, actually inventions, says Borkman. His opinion derives from 35 years in ship surveying and construction, design of tankers and sea-going ferries, and practical observations of steel vessels after collisions. Never before, Borkman notes, has a smaller object, the lightweight upper actual non-rigid flexible steel structure consisting of many smaller parts, destroyed the bigger and stronger other object, the complex steel structure below, only with the assistance of gravity. Borkman scoffs at Bazant's mythical free-falling top block, bringing 287 columns hammering down in a perfect array on the 287 columns below. Steel bends and mashes in Borkman's salty world, and is not certain that the hammer even hits the nail. Real-life columns miss, lodge in horizontal structures, and punch holes in floors, creating energy-absorbing frictions, deformed steel, local failures, and a soft collision, not impact, that tangles damaged floors in a shuffled array and stops well short of total collapse. Videos show that Bazant's alleged pile driver disintegrates within 3.5 seconds after the roof starts to fall, before global collapse starts. Borkman challenges Dr. Bazant and his followers to produce a timetable, analysis, and explanation consistent with the video evidence, and tells us what happened to the upper block. Molten iron flowing like lava. Steel starts melting at 2,700 degrees, almost 1,000 degrees hotter than jet fuel fires, notes Pegolo. Why did the NIST investigation not consider reports of molten steel in the wreckage, he asks. Fire Department of New York Captain Phil Rivolo reported seeing in the basements molten steel, like if you were in a foundry, like lava. Even Leslie Robinson, one of the design engineers of the World Trade Center and a supporter of the official collapse story, reportedly acknowledged on October 5, 2001, that 21 days after the attack, molten steel was still running. Richard Garlock, a structural engineer in Robertson's firm, said going below the debris past the columns was red hot, molting, and running. Dr. Abulhossein Astench Asil, another supporter of the official story and the first structural engineer given access to the World Trade Center steel, told PBS, "I saw melting of girders in the World Trade Center. Jet fuel can't melt steel, but thermite explosive incinerators can create temperatures in excess of 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit," writes Rice, instantly melting, severing short segments of steel columns and beams. Chemical evidence of thermite found in the powdered debris by physicist Dr. Stephen Jones is cited by Rice, by Obeid, and by Clark Townsend. Brookman challenges NIST to explain tiny iron-rich spheres found in the World Trade Center dust, which appear to be solidified droplets of once molten iron. Crucial evidence survives discredited 2002 FEMA report. The FEMA 403 report was incomplete at best and a cover-up at worst, says structural engineer Michael Donnelly of New Jersey, noting that a metallurgical study in Appendix C.2 found evidence of a severe high-temperature corrosion attack on the steel, with subsequent intergranule melting forming a sulfur-rich liquid that severely weakened the structural steel. FEMA scientists later state in Appendix C.6 that no clear explanation for the source of that sulfur has been identified. Donnelly finds that unacceptable. The report has uncovered an unexplainable phenomenon within the context of the official story, which may have led to the collapse of the 3 World Trade Center buildings, he writes, and has stated that further study is needed, but FEMA has not proceeded with further research. Evidence was not just ignored, it was destroyed. Firemen rioted at Ground Zero, protesting the desecration of the dead and a hasty scoop and dump cleanup of the structural steel debris. The destruction of the crime scene evidence is inexcusable, Hubner writes. Scott laments the masses of vital forensic evidence lost, and Bill Manning, editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering magazine, called FEMA's investigation a half-baked farce. Steel components were stamped with identification numbers that would have aided their reassembly for study. But that reassembly never took place, Brookman asks. Why was the steel not thoroughly examined by fire safety and structural experts before being shipped off to Asia for recycling? Pegolo charges that FEMA hampered and distorted the investigation, citing Dr. Abulhassan Estensal's complaint in 2002 to the House Committee on Sciences that FEMA held back essential engineering drawings and videotapes and photographs. Such flawed methodology was accompanied by inadequate theories that cannot explain the loss of the cores, Scott points out. He says FEMA's notion that floor connections all failed simultaneously at the outer wall and at the core is not too plausible. Bill Genesaris, a structural engineer and builder based in Melbourne, believes that a pancake-style collapse should have left supporting columns standing. Such a collapse would have left at least dozens of shattered floors in the building footprint below. Only very small floor sections were found, and not many of them. Deceptive presentation further damaged FEMA's credibility. Tom Lackey, who designs bridges for Vermont Agency of Transportation, cites the Minneapolis Bridge Collapse study as the kind of analysis and straightforward explanation the World Trade Center needs. FEMA's reports stack up poorly. Some of its graphics omit the cores altogether, says Scott, and some depict columns half as wide and twice as far apart as they actually were. Scott decries the attempts to distort important technical information. The Australians used more colorful terminology. Mason says we have been taken for suckers. Genesaris says we've been stooged. Truncated and fudged computer model undermines NIST report 2005. NIST's $20 million report is generally believed by those who haven't read its 10,000 pages to explain how fires and plane impacts destroyed the World Trade Center. The report not only fails to explain why and how the towers completely collapsed, Brookman points out, but it states that the collapse became inevitable without any further explanation. He asks why NIST considered conservation of energy and momentum principles only up to the moment prior to collapse. NIST stopped its computerized models before the onset of collapse, Scott complains. No work was done to calculate what happened during the failure. Why are we content with this? Ron Brookman adds. The complete collapse mechanism cannot be omitted for brevity in any comprehensive analysis. NIST's claim that kinetic attack exceeded the building's reserve strength is not supported by any calculations or by any evidence whatsoever or any serious structural analysis, states Anders Borkman. While NIST fails to show essential work on central issues, its numerous volumes are packed with distracting trivia. Hubner, whose 25 years of structural engineering experience includes forensic investigation of structural collapses, compares NIST's effort to a college paper where you just keep adding stuff to make the paper longer. Lots of pages of nothing. Definitely trying to cover something up. Brookman asked NIST investigators to explain the complete pulverization of building materials and contents and visibly explosive clouds of dust, ash, and debris. He received no reply. I believe in the laws of physics, wrote Brookman, and rely on them every day. NIST reports seem to require multiple leaps of faith in highly improbable events, wrote Pasternak. Computer models using NIST's best estimates of temperature and damage could not even generate a collapse, Scott points out. They'd simply adjust the input until the desired outcome is achieved. NIST probably overestimated core column damage. Scott believes almost certainly overestimated steel temperatures and definitely overestimated damage to fire protection. So important an inquiry should rely on logical deduction, reason, and first principle analysis, Scott says, not circular reasoning and adjusting models to get agreement with a preconceived explanation. 47-story Building 7's near freefall collapse defies the NIST report of 2008.